Right, this is then part 2 of the solution for the challenge of the Room API. So what we've done in the previous video was to create firstly these two packages, repositories and Room. We created the entity, the DAO, the Room database class, and the singleton class that gets me a connection to the database. Then we created all of these repositories that will help us to work with the database asynchronously. So that's what we did in the previous video. So what I want to do now is to go and create the adapter class that will help me or to help assist with my recycler view. So I'm going to say new Java class, and we're going to call this class book adapter. And let's say okay there, and you can see it's part of it's in the same level as my main activity, my data activity, and the book adapter. Okay, so this book adapter class of mine, if you remember from previous videos, if I'm going too fast in this video with the book adapter, just go and have a look at my videos on the recycler view again. So this one should be extends recycler view dot adapter. So we'll change that adapter later on. So what we want now is to just say Alt Enter there, implement the methods, and say OK, and it creates these methods for me. So I'm going to start off with a private list of book objects. Let's call it books. Alt Enter for your import. Then I'm going to create an interface here, and remember this interface helps me to know which item in the list was actually clicked. So I'm going to say public interface. Let's call this one item clicked, and then for this interface we'll only have one method there called on item clicked. So if you remember from my previous videos, we did this interface exactly the same. So it's going to be index. So that will be the index in the list or in the recycler view where it was clicked. And then I'll need to have a reference variable of that type. So I'm going to say item clicked. Come on. And let's call this one activity, because this one activity will essentially be linked to an activity. Just remove that import there. Right, so we've got books declared, we've got activity declared. Now we need a constructor here. So I'm going to say public book adapter, and let's pass in a context first. Second argument, let's pass in a list of book objects called books again. Maybe to just not confuse here, let's just call this one list. Right, so this will be my constructor for this class. I'll pass in a context and a list of book objects that I want to set to my recycler view. So I'm going to say books equals this list that was passed in to have a reference to that books, and then context will be linked to the activity that is using this interface or this book adapter. So we're going to pass in, for example, main activity.this into this context, and then we can refer to activity here equals, and I'm going to make this an item clicked and then use the context. So if it's the main activity that was passed in here, then the main activity will be converted to an item clicked, which means that the main activity must implement this interface called item clicked. Right, so let's create our own view holder class now. So you'll see that it basically returns back a view holder object here, but it's of the base class recycler view, and we want to create our own one. So I'm going to say public class, let's call it view holder also. It extends now this one, this recycler view dot view holder. Now just click on it, Alt Enter, create constructor matching super. Now inside of here, we need to go and define on the layout file. So on the layout file, that's called book row layout, we have two text views that we want to set data on. So we need to define those two text views. So this is what we do in here. So we're going to say text view TV title, and the other one was TV author. So if you refer back to this layout, you'll see this one is TV title, that one is TV author. So we need to have a link to them, and then inside of this view holder constructor then, after super item view, we'll set them up. So I'm going to say TV title equals. Now item view is a link to this file called book row layout, and I'll show you now if you forgot about that. So item view dot find the view by its ID, and the ID there is TV title. Let's do TV author quickly the same way. It's also item view dot find the view by its ID, and it's called TV author. So remember, this item view is referring to book row layout. On that layout, we've got an ID TV title and TV author, and those are the ones that we're linking to. Now, if we want to have our recycler view clickable, like we should have in this challenge, we're going to say item view, which is a link to every item, and you're going to call .set on click listener new on, and just select it. And there's your on click listener for every item. So what do we do here? We're basically just going to say activity dot on item clicked. So we're going to call this method on item clicked. So if it was the main activity that was passed in, on the main activity there must be a method called on item clicked, and we're going to call that method. And then we're going to go to our books array list dot index of, and then we're going to refer to v.get tag. Now the type of this v.get tag must just be a book, so that's why it's giving you that comment there. So remember, we set this tag somewhere else. We're going to do that now in one of these methods. So the set tag method we're going to use on bind view holder, set the tag to a specific object. So here we get the tag of the one that was clicked, we get the index of it inside of the books array list, and then we know which one was clicked. Right, so that's it for the view holder class. So let's go down and finish the recycler views view holder. So before we do that, let's just set the type at the top. So the generic type here will be book adapter dot view holder. So that's the type, and if you go down, then this one must just be replaced by book adapter, as well as this one that gets returned must be replaced by our own book adapter. Right, so let's go into the book adapter.view, or the onCreate view holder method. So this is where we now make a connection to this external layout. So we will say view, whatever you want to call it, equals layout inflator dot from. And the from here must be the context. So we're going to use view group there, dot get context. Then we're going to put the dot there, inflate. What do we want to inflate? Well, it is in the layout folder, and the file is called book row layout. So it's this one that we want to inflate, or we want to make a connection to. Second argument there must be the view group that was passed in, and the last argument must just be false to not attach this to a root. I'm just going to go to a new line there, and now we have a connection to this external layout. And now I want to call this view holder. So you can see it passes back a view holder. So the view holder accepts in the constructor an item view, or a view, which is defined as view, and that's exactly what we want to pass in. So I'm going to say new view holder, and it must be of this type that we did now, book adapter, and we're going to pass in this new view, which is the view, the connection to this. So you can see then passing in that view there, which is the connection to book row layout. If I say item view.find view by ID, I'm working on this layout. Right, and then for this method, the onBind view holder method, we're going to go to this view holder that was passed in, which is essentially the one that we created now. On it, there's TV title, TV author, and there's an item view. So I'm going to go to the view holder dot item view, and I'm going to set the tag here. So I'm going to set the tag as books.get, and the index where we are currently at will be indicated by this I. Right, and then we're going to go to view holder dot TV title. Well, let's start with author first. Dot set text, and the text will be books dot get I dot get, in this case author. Now let's do the same thing for the title. So it's going to be TV title dot set text, again, it's going to go to books.getI.getTitle. Right, so now we've set up everything. So remember, this onBind view holder runs for every element inside of your books array list. And how does it know how many items? It calls getItemCount. So here we must say books.size. So the size, that will give me the number of books that we want to set to the recycler view. This onBind view holder runs then that amount of times. Every time it runs, telling you where it is by referring to the I there. Okay, and so for every item, we set the title and the author, and we set a tag so that when it gets clicked, we get the tag and we get the index of where it was clicked. Right, so now I think it's time for us to go to the main activity and see what we can do in the main activity. So just to have a quick look at your main activity again, we will have the recycler view right at the top with a list of all the books. So we must go and get those books and set it to the recycler view. And then we can add a new book on this activity as well. So creating new book will add a new book to the database. Let's see what we need to have here to set this up. So for the recycler view, we've got the recycler view there at the top. We also need an adapter here. So we're going to say recycler view dot adapter. Let's call it my adapter. I also want to have a list of book objects that I will refer to later on. Let's call this books. Alt enter for your import and Alt enter again for the list import. Now let's just set up our array list here. So I'm going to say books equals new array list. The recycler view has been set up. All the links has been made. So let's just set up the recycler view here. So I'm going to say recycler view dot set has fixed size to true, which means that we will have better performance. Then we set the layout manager. Now I'm going to use a grid layout here, so I'm going to say new grid layout manager, passing in the context, which can just be this, the span count 3. Go back to my video if you can't remember this. Then I'm going to use a grid layout manager dot horizontal. And then I'm going to not reverse the layout, which will be false. Okay, so go and have a look at my video on the recycler view. I've given you the different grid layouts. Right, so that's the layout manager. Right, and then I want to call a method. So I'm going to call update recycler view. Let's just leave it as that. So this method doesn't exist, so use Alt Enter on it, and it will create this method for you. And we will use this method now. Okay, so update recycler view is where I want to set this new items now to the recycler view. But I'm going to reuse this. So this is why I'm adding this into a method. Okay, so what I want to do here is now to call one of my repositories. And the repository I want to call is get all books async. So we want to make a connection to the database, get all the books, and show it in the recycler view. So I'm going to say new get all books async. So you'll remember then we need to pass in a context only and then the async task callback. So the context, remember, must be get application context. Otherwise you'll have a memory leak. Then the last one will be new async task callback, and it opens up this whole thing for you. Just remember to call.execute and end it off. Now, what does this thing do then? It goes into the background. We've done that now in the previous video. It goes into the background, get a list of all the books, and if handle response runs, we know that there is some books in the database. Otherwise, it will be going to handle fault, and we can just show a toast there, maybe say error plus e.getMessage. Right. Now, in handle response is now what we want to do if there is some data in the database, and we will need to set it now to our array list. So I'm going to use that books that we set there at the top, books, which is a list of books, and we're going to set that equal to this response. So now we have a link to all the books in our database. Then go to my adapter. We set up the adapter, so it's new book adapter. What does the book adapter accept? A context and a list of books. So the context, in this case, we can use the main activity, dot this, that's the context, and then the list of books. And it is our books array list that we have here. Then go to your recycler view again, set the adapter to this my adapter. And that will create your recycler view for you, filled with all the books from the database. Now this will give you a problem because we need to have something there at the top. So if it gets to this line, it will give us a problem. Why? Because inside of the adapter class, we've got an activity that was passed in. Let me just see where I do this. There we pass in the main activity, and that activity is converted to item clicked, which means that if the main activity doesn't implement item clicked, I will have a problem. Okay, so just Alt Enter on that, implement the methods, and that's the method we need. So on item click will be at the bottom, and now when this method runs, everything will be fine because it's converting my main activity to an item clicked, which will be fine. Right, and we'll get back to this method later on. Okay, so before we go to the click part there, let's go into this create button so we can create something new to the database. So the first thing I want to do in here is to go and test if all of those edit text has got data in them. So I'm going to say etauthor.getText.toString.isEmpty. If that one is empty, or etisbn.getText.toString.isEmpty, or the last one, if ettitle.getText.toString.isEmpty. So if any one of those is empty, then we want to tell the user, let's just use a toast there, and we'll say, please enter all fields. Right. Then the else part is we can now take the data from those edit texts and create a new book object so that we want to place into the database. So I'm going to say book equals new book. So remember, we're using the default constructor, so you're going to use that one as it is. And then on that book object, we will call .set author, ISBN, and title. So setting the author will just be etauthor.getText.toString.trim. Book again .set ISBN, etisbn.getText.toString.trim. And then also let's set the title as ettitle.getText.toString.trim. Right, so now we've created a new book object. Set the author, the ISBN, and the title. So now which one of these methods should we use now to insert this book into the database? So we've got this method called insertBookAsync. So let's call that, sorry, not method again, the class called insertBookAsync. So we're going to say new insertBookAsync. Again, it's going to take in the book that we want to insert. So that will be book, comma. Second argument will be the context. Remember to use getApplicationContext. And the third argument will be the async task callback. So before you do the third argument, just put the dot execute there at the end. It's a bit easier to do. And then you do your last argument there, which will be new async task callback. Right, so now what do we want to do then? If there's an error that occurs, which means that, let's say, for example, this book already exists in the database or whatever, it will go to the handle fault. So I'm going to say toast error e.getMessage. Right, now in the handle response, this is now this means now the book has been inserted into the database successfully, and we've got this book object back. So then I can just call update the recycler view. So what is update recycler view going to do? It's going to basically get all the books again, set it to the adapter, and then everything's fine again. Okay, so that's just updating my recycler view. Then I'm going to display a toast there, and we can say something like response, because this response that was passed in is now the book that was inserted. So I'm going to say response.getMessage. get title, and we can say something like successfully inserted, or let's say added. Right. Then after this, you can go to ET author. We can set the text to null, just to clear it. We can go to ET title also to set the text to null to clear it. And we can also go to ET ISBN dot set text null to clear it. Right, so now we have creating a new object into the database, updating it, or getting everything from the database, and then updating the recycler view. So I think this activity is basically done, except for where we want to go with when we click on an item in the recycler view. Right, so let's just quickly do this part on the on item clicked. So what I want to do here is to go and create a new intent. So I'm going to say intent equals new intent, and this intent should take me from the main activity to my data activity, which is now the second activity. Right, but I want to see also which specific book object should be shown on the next activity. So for this, I'm going to pass some extra data. So let's just say intent dot put extra. Now you remember from the previous videos we did on the put extra methods that we need to indicate a key and a value pair. So the value here, if I want to pass through the ISBN number of the book that's currently selected, I will go to books, which is the array list, dot get the specific position where it is selected now, and that will be index. So I'm going to say index there, dot get the ISBN number. So I'm passing through the ISBN number to the data activity class. And then I'm going to call start activity for result, so that when it comes back, I can again update my recycler view. So start the activity for result. And then inside of this, we need to pass in the intent and then a specific request code. So for the request code, let's just go to the top and add a request code. Let's just add it here. So I'm going to say private static final int, let's call it data underscore activity, and let's just set it to 1. Then go down to the bottom and just call this one data activity. So it's basically just passing in a 1 there. So when it comes back to this activity, we want to have the on activity result method. So we're going to go to generate, override methods, on activity result method. So this is the method we want. And now very simple here, when it comes back, I just want to basically call update recycler view again, so that if it was deleted, I can just update my recycler view. So I'm going to say if the request code, so remember the request code is now this data activity. So if the request code, and also the one that was passed in here, so if the request code is equal to data activity, I know it was the data activity that came back, and I'm going to also test if the result code, which we'll set now on the other activity, is equal to result OK. So if the result is OK, which means that we actually successfully deleted that object, and it comes back to on activity result, only then we will update our recycler view. Okay, so that's all for the main activity. Let's go and have a look at the second activity now. So now we started the second activity, which is the data activity. And this data activity then will receive the data from the other activity, this data, ISBN, and we'll get the ISBN. Right, so in here, what I want to do is to just create a book object at the top, because we are only referring or basically using one book object in this side on this activity. Right, so then right at the start, when this activity starts, I'm going to call this. So if you go and look at your repositories again, we have a get book by ISBN. And remember, we've sent through the ISBN. So I'm going to say new get book by ISBN async we need to indicate that ISBN number. So to get the ISBN, I'm just going to say get intent. That gets the intent that started this activity, dot get string extra, and we call the data ISBN on that side. So remember here, we said the data is ISBN, and if I call get intent.get string extra, I'm getting that data now. So then the second argument, so that's the first argument, the ISBN number. Second argument is the context, so always get application context. And then your third argument is the async task callback. So just remember to add that execute there. And now the third argument, new async task callback, and opens up the whole thing for me. Right, so now it connects to the database. Pass in that ISBN. Check if it exists. If it exists, we have it as this object there. So what we can do here then is to go and say ettitle.setText, set the title to the ettitle, set the text to ettitle by going to response.getTitle. And that's the title we want. Let's say etisbn.setText will be response.getISBN. And then etauthor.setText response.getAuthor. So then everything is set on the edit text, and then we can just take this book object or the book reference variable there at the top and link it to this response. So we know that this is the book that we're currently working with. So the handle response there, or handle fault, will just be a toast. We will say error plus e.getMessage. And then if there's an error when we try to get this book that was actually selected to go back to this activity, then I think this data activity won't mean anything. So I'm going to say data activity dot this dot finish. So if there's an error with displaying the contents of this book, it means that either the book doesn't exist or something seriously went wrong. So we close down this activity. We won't use it. Right, let's go into the edit button. So if the edit button gets clicked, we only want to open up and enable everything. So I'm going to go to btn apply, which is the apply button, and I'm going to set the visibility to view.visible. So remember, right at the start, we said the apply button should be gone. So when we click on edit, it should now show there. We also set the title, the author, and the ISBN number to enabled false. So I'm going to copy those, and that's what we want to enable them now here, but not the ISBN number, because the ISBN number is unique. So you don't want the user to change the ISBN number. So it's going to be ettitle.setEnabled. Let's set it to true, and we set this one also to true. Right, that's the edit button. So if the edit button gets clicked, all these will be enabled. Right, let's go to the apply button. Right, so in the apply button, I want to check whether all of these is empty again. So I'm just going to go to the main activity. We've done an if statement here, this one. Let's just copy this if statement because it's the same edit text if I'm not mistaken. It's exactly the same edit text. And what I want to do now is to check again if these edit texts is empty, if etauthor, ettitle, or etisbn, well, actually the ISBN cannot be empty, but let's just leave it at that. So if any one of those three is empty again, then we can have a toast again. Please enter all fields. Right, then the else part here with apply means now, remember we are in the data activity. So if you click on apply the changes there, it means that you're changing whatever was changed here. So clicking apply changes is editing or changing the data. So let's go back there. So the else part there will be now. Now I want to update this new object by looking at the changes made there, although we're not going to use the ISBN. So basically the changes on the author and the title. So go to the book object, set the title to ettitle.getText.toString.trim. So we know now in this else it's not empty. So now we're setting it. Set the author to etauthor dot getText dot toString dot trim. Right, so now the book object has been set or changed. Now we must change it in the database. So which one of these repositories are we going to use to change it in the database? So there's an update book async. So let's use that one. New update book async. Again, it will accept that book object we want to change. So it's going to be book. Then the context, which will be get application context. And then your third argument, which is the async task callback. But before that, just call execute. Right. New async task callback. Right. Again, we have handle fault and handle response. For handle fault, we can use the toast again. Error e.getMessage. Right, and then in handle response, it means that everything went fine. We updated that book, and this is the new book that was updated. Okay, so we can just show a toast here again and say something like, let's start with response.getTitle, and we'll say successfully updated. Right, so now if this was updated, we need to set the result for the main activity. So remember, when it exits here, it comes back to the main activity into the onActivity result. So if the result code is okay, then we update the recycler view. So we need to set the result code to okay. So we're going to say set result, and then we need the result code, and the result will be result okay. So now we know it updated, and on this side we're testing for the result okay, and then we update the recycler view. Right, so there's setting the result, and then we can go to data activity.this.finish. And then that data will be updated. Right, then the last thing for this video will be the last button there. Where's that button? There's the delete button. So remember, now the user just clicks on delete. We already know which one to delete, so we're just going to call it. So let's just have a look at the delete method there. There's the delete, sorry, not the method, the class delete book async. So that is the one we want to call. So I'm just going to call, obviously, yeah, before we do this, you can ask the user, are you sure you want to delete this, whatever. So we'll get to dialog boxes later on, but you can call this now, yeah. So delete book async, new delete book async. So what do we need? An ISBN number. Where will I get the ISBN number? Well, ISBN is the number that was actually passed into this class. Let me just see, there we did it. So there's the ISBN number. I'm going to get that one quickly. It's the same. Get the ISBN number. Second argument is the context, get application context. Third argument, the async task callback. So just call execute first, and then add that last argument, new async task callback. So that will then search for the ISBN number, get the object to delete it, and delete it. And then if everything went fine, it will go into handle response. If something went wrong, it will go into handle fault. Handle fault, let's just show the toast there. e.getMessage. Right, and then the handle response, we can also show a toast there to say that this response dot get title successfully deleted. Right, that's the toast. But now, because it's deleted, when it comes back to the main activity, we want to also update this recycler view. So again, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to set the result as result okay, so that it will update my recycler view, and then finish off this activity. Right, so then this will also set the result okay, finish it. It knows it comes back from the data activity, and the result code's okay, so it will update the recycler view. Okay, so let's just quickly test this out. The title of the book, let's just call it Lord of the Rings. Author of the book, Chuck Norris. Let's create a new book. Right, so that was created successfully. So you can see that this is cut off at the bottom. So maybe what we can do is to go to our, Let's go to our main activity quickly. And we set a height for this. Let's say we make it 60 there. Let's make the height there 100 dp. Let's go back to the design. Maybe that's too small. Let's make it 200 dp. Okay, let's see again. Okay, so this looks a bit better. Let's just add another one there. Enter the title of the book, whatever. That's the author of the book, John Rambo. So create a new book, and there you can see the book was entered. Okay, so now if we want to change something, let's go to whatever, and we edit. Opens up nicely. Let's change this one to the 2 towers. Let's say apply the changes. You can see it was changed successfully. Going back to the onActivity result method. Let's click on it again. The 2 towers, let's click on delete. 2 towers deleted successfully, and I think our application is working 100%. Hope you've learned something from this challenge. See you in the next video.